Excited to have overwhelming support on the floor today for domestic violence survivors. That bill had overwhelming support. The first version of it, 1470, I believe, was the number that the governor vetoed. Leader Eccles and I had already been working on a trailer bill prior to the veto ever because we had some cleanup we wanted to do. The governor's veto actually kind of outlined some of the cleanup we were already planning on doing. He just didn't communicate with us on it, and so he vetoed it. Unnecessary step, but I'm glad that he worked with our team and Leader Eccles' team to come to an agreement on 1835, which now goes over to the House for their consideration. If it follows the pattern of the previous few votes, it should pass overwhelmingly there next week. It's a very important measure. Oklahoma experiences some of the worst domestic violence numbers in the country, and I am saddened by that fact, but I'm proud to be partnering up with Leader Eccles and advocates to try to address that issue in a meaningful way. Budget negotiations obviously are ongoing. We'll be back in there at 2 p.m. Made quite a bit of progress today in actually eliminating a lot of expenditures. Still have two guiding principles walking in there from the Senate perspective. One is keeping $1 billion in cash, and the other is not overextending ourselves on additional tax cuts beyond the largest tax cut we already addressed early in session. So open up to any questions people may have.
Can you talk about this settlement or decree that was discussed in budget negotiations with mental health? What is that about?
Yeah, I can't speak to it extremely intelligently. I think the AG can probably address it more directly, and or the mental health director, or my sub-chair, vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, Paul Racino, is much more well-versed on it. Essentially, though, anytime an agreement is reached between the AG and a party on a lawsuit against the state of Oklahoma, if it exceeds a certain dollar threshold, the legislature has to, by joint resolution, affirm that and then appropriate the money. That's what we're talking about. Right now, I think the total on that for next year's $8 million something, and what we agreed to the House was the first tranche of it of $4.1 million to be housed at the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. If I said another single word, I'd be way beyond my knowledge depth.
Okay.
Senator Pugh had really pushed for the stipends for school support staff, but sounds like you guys came off of that today. I mean, can you kind of explain the rationale?
Yeah, it's just part of the negotiation process, and it was obvious that the House was not going to want to put money towards support staff. They didn't support trying to put additional support toward bus drivers, lunch workers, and the like. We felt very adamant that we needed to. There's a shortage of employees. It's really hard for school districts to recruit those, but I'll run at the same brick wall about 5 times, but I try to move over 3 or 4 feet each time. And I had to run at that brick wall every meeting, and they had rejected support staff money, and so we dropped that in order to drop some money on their request. I think in that 2 or 3 minute span, we dropped $475 million from the bottom line, which goes into my $1 billion savings.
And then there was the whole issue with the Arts Council money. I guess OSCE is not going to have a grant, so you guys are basically kind of bailing out the Arts Council. Is that a way to phrase it?
I am very well versed on many parts of the budget. The 2 questions that have been budget related on these 2, I know the exact same thing you learned in there. I learned more about it from Senator Pugh. We asked him, well, we didn't ask him. He volunteered to reach out to Amber Sharples, the director, yesterday, and he did, and got that information. Essentially, I think from what I heard, there's a fear the State Department may no longer support some of that, and so we wanted to make sure that those are rural arts programs that we found bring a lot of value.
There's a mention that the numbers will be worked on over the weekend. I take it to mean that no agreement is expected Thursday or Friday. You guys will come back on Monday. Is that an accurate assessment?
That's an accurate assessment of what those statements would naturally lead you to. I can't make any commitment at this point because sometimes this is my 8th year being in the budget room, from being vice chair through floor leader to now. And there's always something that breaks and then things just fall into place. We haven't had that moment yet. but that could happen this afternoon, it could happen tomorrow, or it could happen Monday. We're not going to have an artificial timeline of exactly when it has to happen.
It's kind of hard for us to tell, looking at your spreadsheets, there's so many line items on so many pages, what kind of percentage of agreement that you've reached on particular line items. Are you able to assess how much progress you've made and how close you are at this point?
Yeah, I would encourage you to grab one of those ones down there right now that has the yellow highlighting from the Senate. The House may account for it a different way, but the ones we have, if it has that yellow highlighted, or the subcommittee that's already yellow, we have it highlighted in green, that's where the areas of disagreement still exist. The other line items, we've already come into agreement with the House. I haven't counted up how many line items or the dollar amount or percentage change on those yet. I've been keeping a running tally in my head of where we're at on cash above and beyond our savings accounts, and trying to reconcile that every night. But we can help guide you on that if we...
Well, are you happy with the progress that you've made?
Yeah, obviously.
In the last couple of days?
Obviously, we'd like to be done now, but we'll stay as long as it takes.
Back to the survivorship. Is the governor on board with this language? Have you talked with him? Do you expect this to be signed as well?
So Becky Gooch on my staff has been working with Trish Everest, Secretary Everest, on this, and it is our understanding that the governor is in complete agreement with the language we passed today.
What are the chances you'll be back in special session?
I don't know. I have no idea. That's up to if the governor, he's taken himself out of the negotiations the last 2 days. Depends on if he vetoes the budget in part or in whole. Last year, we did a concurrent special alongside this. We haven't gotten to those discussions yet, but that's always an option as well.
Where do we stand with sheriff and deputy payrolls? Check on that.
So currently, there's a $20 million line item on the House side of the budget that includes $10 million for police officers in small municipalities, those under 4,500 people, and then for sheriff's deputies in counties below 75,000, I believe. It's a position we haven't taken as the Senate right now because we have not traditionally paid the salaries of county sheriffs and county sheriff deputies, nor have we paid the salaries of municipal police officers. We obviously know it's really hard to recruit, and we've seen a decimation of recruitment and retention of law enforcement over recent years, not just in small towns, in big towns as well. They have an exacerbated problem there. We're sympathetic to that, so we've offered up a counter proposal to put money in an already existing grant program that's currently housed at the Attorney General's office. They have not taken our position yet, so we're still have a delta there. We're still not in agreement.
Is that grant money eligible for just counties or for both municipalities and counties?
We would, if the desire was to also allow it for municipalities, we could change that language. We would have to change the language in that current grant program already. There's just a revolving fund already there dedicated to grants for equipment for law enforcement. This would just put that on steroids, and we would have to adjust whatever the agreement came to.
If the $350 million sticks on deferred maintenance for colleges and universities, are you going to be happy with that? Do you think it'll make an immediate difference?
I think, yes, I think so. The House position right now, though, is to defer deferred maintenance. And so when you hear me say that, I'm not just trying to be cute with words. They had 335. They came up a little bit to 350. But the language that you hear us talking about on the formula back and forth, the House has it where no payments will go out for 5 years. So you put money and house it at a fund, it grows some interest, and then you start paying it out kind of like their legacy capital fund, but on deferred maintenance. We will not agree to that. We believe deferred maintenance has been an ongoing problem that we need to address immediately and not delay by 5 years. So there's a real impasse there. I think we'll get through that. Then the question becomes, what percentage do you put to the two major research universities versus Russo versus 2-year when it comes to higher ed? And that is a moving target based on what do we do, if anything, at the wet lab and the engineering lab and then the bio research at OSU. I think that we should take into account, if we put larger sums of money for capital projects at OU and OSU, probably should put more money toward Russo in 2 years through that formula. So it's a very fluid situation on that right now.
Do you think the LCF discussion is over?
Unless they want to resurrect it somehow.
Do you anticipate that they'll attempt to resurrect that?
Oh yeah, I think so. That's Chairman Wallace's baby. He believes deeply in it, and so and he's used it for some good too. So I fully anticipate them trying to bring it back up. I fully anticipate us saying, hey, we just saved a lot of cash when you knocked off our stipend and you knocked off our workforce and we knocked off prep. We can pay all these things in one-time cash. And the carousel will continue to go around. Yeah.
Sorry, has the House backed off on tax cuts?
They have not definitively said they have, but it appears they have. They're no longer booking it.
Your chamber just advanced those 2 bills dealing with storm relief.
Yes, sir.
What happens next?
Well, that will go to OEM, and OEM, Office of Emergency Management, will be able to use those to front load some of the expenses municipalities have that they may not be able to afford. So it will provide immediate relief, assuming the governor will sign them, which I have full faith that he will. We'll start getting immediate relief. There's a small sum left over that's been depleted in the last couple of years of what's there, so we needed to replenish those funds so the communities can get help. One of the new wrinkles in these things is typically there's a 25% match when you get federal dollars on an emergency. For as long as I've been involved, 12.5% is picked up by the state, 12.5% is picked up by the municipality or county, or a combination thereof. This one will allow us to front load some of that 12.5% local match so there's no unnecessary delays, and then we'll get reimbursed on that over time.
So you don't have to wait for the Fed's money to come through to use that money?
The Fed's money is a reimbursement thing, so you have to show expenditures, so they'll be able to use some of that for expenditure and then recoup it. That's the best of my understanding of how that works.
How quickly could that happen then?
That's a really good question for the Office of Emergency Management. I don't, I'm not trying to shirk it, I just don't know how quickly they'll be able to move it. All right.
Tell us a story about your new photo. Who painted it?
Mike Wimmer. So Mike Wimmer has, it's kind of awkward to have it over my shoulder. I hope that's not on all the TV cameras, but yeah. So that on the top right hand is what I'm most proud of having in my office. That's my grandfather's distinguished flying cross from World War II. He was a B-25 pilot. His navigator got killed in the seat next to him. And he still did the bombing raid, took out the supply bridge. Catoosa is where I'm from, so the Blue Well, I wanted to make sure the Blue Well was in there. And then Dr. Coburn is my absolute mentor and who got me involved in a lot of this stuff, so I wanted his book there. And then, believe it or not, an OU grad who is very much faithful alum to OU. I wanted that OU plate, but I modeled, Mike Wimmer modeled this on Boone Pickens' picture upstairs. I said, hey, I want my family in my portrait. And he goes, I can't just do a family portrait for you. And he goes, have you looked at Boone Pickens' thing? He's got his family in a photo on the side. And I was super excited that he was able to work my family into there because they're absolutely the most important part of my life.
When did you pose for this?
I don't know. They took some pounds off me for. I didn't want to look as heavy as I currently do.